Lads, how's it going? It's me, Power Rankings from 831 to 910. Let's talk about the Duel Links metagame because it is a wild one, especially one that is pretty much going to be over here in the next couple of weeks after KC Cup September concludes. I'm expecting a rather substantial ban list because this meta may not be what you think it is, what you're thinking right now. And we'll talk about it really quickly. If you don't know how the power rankings work, it's quite simple. We take all of the Swiss into top cut tournaments with side decks so we can have accurate data. And we assign them points based on where the decks finish, all the way from 1st to 8th place. So you have to make top 8 to earn any power ranking points. We do this because in tournament gameplay, if any of these top 8 decks top and you take them into ladder, it's guaranteed you get King of Games with them. If you go King of Games and you try to take these decks into the tournaments, you are not guaranteed winning in the tournaments. These are the most competitive decks, and pretty much 9.9 times out of 10, most decks that show up on here end up doing very well in KC Cup. So it's just the best way to determine what is truly the best decks in the game, rather than I'm just sacking a whole bunch of best of ones, and this is what I ended up winning with. Let's get into it. These are the tournaments that will be posted for these following 2 weeks: the GG Tour, Battle Phases, Meta Weekly, Meta Freakly, Zero TG, and AU Weekly. If you host, run, or know of a tournament that fits all of the requirements to be in Power Rankings, feel free to contact us in Discord, and we'll be more than happy to add your tournaments onto the listings. But these are the big primary ones that have a decent amount of player base that we have put on for you guys. Getting right into it. In 5th place, Meklord, dropping all the way from 2nd place to 5th place. And this is where the conversation, the meta kind of starts. Meklord, when it first, popped onto the scene, people were like, this is the counter to Black Rose. This is what is going to stop Black Rose from being the sole tier 1 deck. And it didn't, because all Black Rose did was switch up into different back row. People kind of ignore this fact of Black Rose, but Black Rose is a back row deck. They are a staple back row deck. They play every staple in the game and can switch up into any staple especially when you have a side deck. So as soon as the system downs started coming out, Meklord, that was it for Meklord. They could not face something like System Down. So the moment Black Rose was able to focus on them, they completely evaporated from the meta. You still see one or two, slip by and make it really, deep in the tournaments. You could see this one made 2nd place in Battle Phase 411. But ultimately, in terms of being a counter to Black Rose Dragon, that did not happen for Meklords, and they have dropped significantly. Still a part of the metagame, but definitely not, tiered anymore, in my opinion. And we'll talk about the tier list as we go through it. I think you guys will kind of see my reasoning for that towards the end. Coming into 4th place is Elemental Hero. So these are all hero decks that are using Favorite Duel, the really heavy back row hero decks. A lot of people say this is potentially the 2nd best deck in the format, and the data simply does not support that. There are more, spoilers you'll see later, more pure heroes rather than elemental heroes that actually end up topping and doing well. And again, elemental heroes, they're just abusing Favorite Duel to give them the Miracle Fusion while just spamming back row. And at the end of the day, the best back row deck is Black Rose Dragon, so you're just simply trying to out-resource a deck that already does well with resource, usually ending up with Elemental Hero losing when it makes the top cut. You can see it did make a top 4, but not past top 4 in these last 2 weeks. Stygian Dirge in the main deck, kind of the meta that we all find ourselves in right now. 3rd place, Phantom Knights, with a 1st place AU League win and a 2nd place GG Tour. I feel like Phantom Knights, again, all the decks suck in this meta besides one deck, but I feel like Phantom Knights don't get their due course. I feel like a lot of people shit on Phantom Knights, and I listen, I'm down to shit on Phantom Knights all day long because they set a whole bunch of back row and it's all traps and they don't do a whole lot. But that's every deck in the metagame right now. Every deck is setting 3 back row and playing very slowly and just trying to face down Black Rose Dragon. And we have to give, I think, at this point, credit where credit is due. Phantom Knights have been absolutely killing it when it comes to tournament play, and has made it to 3rd place on power rankings. Not bad. Obviously getting 1st place and 2nd place gives them a lot of points towards that. But I feel, especially with the Phantom Knights order, the new skill, it's let them be a little bit more flexible. They're able to use things like their Carnadia and whatnot to get into their breakthrough swords. I've seen more javelin plays than normal, which has been pretty cool to witness. And just, them being able to kind of slowly grind their opponent is very good. In a meta where everyone's playing triple back row, they can kind of thrive a little bit. So if you still have Phantom Knights, I truly believe if you bought Phantom Knights when they first came out, you were just chilling this entire year. You have had access to a meta deck for the entirety of the year, especially with the unnerf that they recently got. Pretty cool to see that a deck, essentially survive all year long. 2nd place, we have Wounded Hero, or just any Hero Alliance, all the other hero decks. You can kind of combine them together. Most of them, I would say 90% of them, 99% of them was Wounded Hero. And this is the sole back row deck that's trying to work itself out in this meta. Essentially just trying to use Sunrise and whatnot to just sack the opponent before they can really hit you with any sort of crazy back row shenanigans. You're pretty much gambling when you play this version of the deck, right? The only protection you have is your Book of Moons and your White Princess, and that's about it, right? After that, you're just trying to get as many Miracle Fusions and Polymerizations and just OTK your opponent before they destroy you. Because generally speaking, this meta is more back row reliant, not so much hand trap reliant. So you're just trying to burn through a single turn, get as many Sunrises. With Sunrise, you have essentially 4 attacks, if you will, right? Sunrise pops a monster, and then your 3 monsters are free to attack. Generally free for you to swing and win the game. The problem is when this deck runs into another White Princess, and then it kind of dies, because that's just kind of what White Princess does. But a lot of people are stacking up on that back row, so this is why this deck's kind of sneaking in and trying to get those dubs. You can see multiple 1st places and 2nd places. 32 points, pretty big jump from 3rd to 2nd place, but not as large as the jump to 1st place. Triple digits, 2 power rankings in a row, 100 points. Black Rose Dragon. I mean, I could tell you how this deck has no limits and can play any back row, any limit 3, any limit 2. They can highly adapt to any situation. Yes, they lost Yugioh to Warrocks, but when you sit down and think about that tournament and put aside the hype for 2 seconds, you realize that the top 8 of that GG Tour, 7 were Black Rose Dragons and 1 was Warrock. And the reason Warrock is winning is because they're able to use balance. Balance lets you start the game. If you put 6 trap cards and they're all anti-Black Rose trap cards, you can start the game almost guaranteeing either Stygian Dirge or a Floodgate Trap Hole, for example, right? That deck was made specifically to counter Black Rose Dragon. If it ran into any other deck, it had a significantly higher chance of failure, which if you go back into that GG Tour, you saw most of the people he played against were Black Rose Dragons. Just using balance to abuse, to face one deck does not make that deck meta. It makes it anti-meta, right? It makes it completely anti-meta to that one strategy, because normally in a tournament setting, you would think you would have multiple matchups, but we don't. We only have matchup against Rose Dragons. At this point, you cannot tell me that Rose Dragon is not tier 0. I am declaring it now. This deck is 100% tier 0. It is the only relevant meta deck, and all other decks revolve around it. To be honest, it's been tier 0 for a while, but we've been giving it the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, oh, Meklords are going to come in and be fun. No, Meklords, as soon as they started siding for them and the Yazi came out, it was over. GG's. No hope for Meklords to ever try and come back. We're looking at Warrocks right now, and while Warrocks have won GG Tour and had multiple top 4s since GG Tour, they have not truly they have not truly done too much to Black Rose Dragon to deter people from playing the deck. The people can still play this deck and play through all of those downsides to still win tournaments and still have massive showings in these tournaments. A fine example of what makes a deck tier 0 versus what doesn't make a deck tier 0, Noble Knights. You guys remember when Noble Knights had a 60-point lead in power rankings before a lot of these decks had like triple-digit power ranking points? What happened afterwards is people adapted and Noble Knights fell off the tier list completely. They could not play into the Desperado quarantine, and they were just completely disappeared. Black Rose Dragon, whenever something comes up to counter it, they just turn around and absolutely ass blast the deck, right? They saw Meklords, changed up the main deck, changed up the side deck, boom, Meklord's gone. They saw War Rocks. They're currently in the processes of screwing up War Rocks. Did you know with War Rocks, if you just destroyed the field spell right away, there isn't much the deck can do. It just kind of scoops it up. There's not a whole lot, especially if you go first and you set your back row removal. There's not a whole lot they can do against you. So very interesting to see what the meta kind of evolves into. Of course, they also have Trishula. You can see this list doesn't have Trishula, but most people are playing Trishula 0 to get around Stygian Dirge. The fact that Stygian Dirge is a commonplace main deck card, I mean, at this point, we're just kind of coping and hoping that it's not tier 0, but let's be honest, let's just throw our hands up and say what it is. We are in a tier 0 meta. The only deck that matters is Black Rose Dragon. Maybe in KC Cup and Best of 1, not so much. You know, you could maybe argue that Heroes kind of has a place or whatever, but when we're talking about competitive tournaments, there is one deck that matters. That is Black Rose Dragon, and that is it. And then your deck specifically has to counter Black Rose Dragon, or you have to be playing Black Rose Dragon. There is no in between. And I know a lot of people, you know, they're constantly moving the goalposts for what a tier 0 deck should be. Oh, Riot has to have a 60% representation rate. It's got to have a 70% representation rate. It's got to have this. It's got to have that. It's got to have whatever. I highly disagree with all that. I think, especially with Duel Links, you have to have a separate kind of category for what a tier 0 deck is. And that's why I think the power rankings are so good. The power rankings have proven 2 power rankings in a row. That is over a 4-week period that Black Rose Dragon has had triple digit power rankings. You can go watch the other power ranking. I believe it was actually even higher over the other decks with massive gaps in power between the two kind of decks, one being Meklord and this one being Heroes, and they're not even close to overtaking, you know, Black Rose Dragon. You can see by this chart, top 8 representation overall, Rose Dragon almost half the chart and only 16% going to Hero. Even if you combined both Hero decks, it would still not even be close to the Black Rose representation. I fully believe we're in a tier 0 meta. I'm declaring it here and now. You guys let me know down in the comments down below if you think this is a tier 0 meta. Do you only play in ladder? Do you not feel that it's tier 0 when you hit ladder? Best of 1s, I could see the argument of people saying best of 1, maybe not so much tier 0, but definitely in competitive play, Black Rose having access to every single back row into the game is too much. They're able to counter every single strategy you throw at them. People are main decking Stygian Dirge. People are playing Heroes. People are playing Meklords. And it doesn't matter. The deck still wins through everything that you throw at it. And you're either forced to play the deck or you play hyper anti-meta Black Rose Dragon, where your deck, for example, War Rocks, would lose against other decks and only win against Black Rose. That is kind of my take on the metagame. Boys, thank you so much for watching. If you didn't see the GG Tour Finals, make sure to check back on the YouTube channel because that will be uploaded hopefully tomorrow. That's it from me. Peace out, boys. Take it easy.